Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. My name is Brennan Purlot, and today we are going to be talking about working out with epilepsy. To start off this presentation, I'm going to be giving a general overview of what epilepsy is. Although I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it and have some general idea what this condition entails, I think it's just important we go over everything. 3 questions that I would like you guys to be asking yourself during this video are going to be, what is epilepsy? What are the physiological effects of epilepsy? So what actually happens when an epileptic undergoes a seizure? And how should we approach exercise with this population? A lot of people are diagnosed with this condition. It's a moderately prevalent condition. So if you're going into PT or OT or really any medical setting, the chances are that you're going to have to deal with it at some point throughout your career. All right, so to start off this presentation, we are going to get that first question out of the way. What is epilepsy? Epilepsy is a chronic neurological disorder that is generally characterized by recurrent seizures. So just by that definition, we know that chronic means it persists over a long period of time, and neurological means that it affects the brain. For somebody to be diagnosed with this condition, they must have 2 unprovoked seizures. The difference between a provoked seizure and an unprovoked seizure is relatively self-explanatory. Anybody can have a provoked seizure. You or me could have one due to dehydration, overheating, fever, alcohol withdrawal, or any number of reasons. An unprovoked seizure is one that happens where there's no obvious culprit behind it. So there's no way to ascertain why this person had a seizure. All right, guys, so development of epilepsy. The development of epilepsy can be completely hereditary, meaning that it can be passed down through your parents or their parents, it can be given through generations, or it can be what's called a spontaneous mutation, which is where it's not passed down from anybody, it's just something that develops in you. Aside from genetics, you can also acquire epilepsy from severe head trauma. All right. Though this condition can affect anybody, there is a little bit of evidence to suggest that it might be a little bit more common in men than it is in women. And maybe this is not attributed to genetics, but rather that men suffering more head injuries than women through contact sports or general stupidity. Something to note about this condition is that it is trigger sensitive. So if you are working with a client who has epilepsy, it's very important that you know their triggers and you know to avoid them. A lot of common triggers are sleep deprivation, overbearing stress, photosensitivity, which is the flickering screens and flashing lights, excessive alcohol usage, low blood sugar, and this last one's more common in women than in men, but hormonal changes can also spike seizures in people with epilepsy. And as for its prominence, according to the World Health Organization, about 50 million people worldwide are diagnosed epileptics, with about 5 million new cases being diagnosed each year. So its prevalence represented as a percentage is about 1.2% of people walk around with this condition, and about 1 in 26 will develop epilepsy at some point in their lives according to the Epilepsy Foundation. Now in 70% of these cases, people are able to achieve full seizure control through medication. And with that remaining 30%, they will experience drug-resistant seizures, which deem medication useless in their case. All right, so I've given you guys a general overview of this disease and told you about things like prevalence and development of the condition, and now it's time to look at the condition in action. The seizures themselves are nothing more than bursts of electrical activity in one or more parts of the brain. Your neurons or brain cells are constantly communicating with each other via electrical signals, and when an epileptic undergoes a seizure, there is an overload of this electrical activity in the brain, causing all these neurons to fire erratically. Now, the different types of seizures, which are focal and generalized, are determined by where in the brain this burst of electrical activity takes place. In the case of a focal seizure, only one part of the brain is affected. And in action, this seizure can take form of muscle spasms or twitches, altered sensations like taste, touch, or smell, or confusion and unusual behavior. And again, the symptoms exhibited are dependent on where in the seizure this burst of electrical activity is localized. A generalized seizure is one that involves both sides of the brain. And there are a lot of different types, but the most common type of generalized seizure is the tonic-clonic seizure. It's super fun to say. I've been saying it for the past 10 minutes. In the tonic phase of the tonic-clonic seizure, is where all the muscles stiffen up and the person may fall to the ground. And then the clonic phase is where the infamous convulsions ensue. This is what everyone knows seizures for. All right, so we are quickly going to go over the phases of a seizure, and then I can get on talking about my case study. There are four phases in an epileptic seizure, and the first two are not always experienced by anybody. The first phase is called the prodromal phase, and it occurs hours or days before the seizure happens. This phase can entail mood swings, headaches, fatigue, mental fogginess, or a myriad of other symptoms that are specific to the person, so a person will know those telltale signs if they're about to get a seizure. The second phase is referred to as aura. Aura happens right before the seizure takes place. During aura, a focal seizure affects a small area of the brain, and this is a telltale sign that a seizure is about to occur. The third phase is the ictal phase, and this is the seizure itself. And then during the post-ictal phase, the fourth phase, a person can experience headaches, confusion, dizziness, memory loss, fatigue, and soreness. There's something I'm going to mention right now, although it's incredibly rare. I think it's just worth pointing out. There's also something called post-ictal psychosis. Sometimes after a seizure, a person can experience psychotic symptoms like hallucinations, delusions, paranoia. And again, this is very rare, and as a PT or OT, you're not going to have to treat this, but I just think it's worth mentioning. All right, ladies and germs, we have gotten through the overview, and we are now going to get into the meat of all of this, exercise and epilepsy. You may or may not have heard of exercise-induced seizures. For a long time, this is why doctors would not recommend people with this condition to engage in sports. Our research now tells us this is incredibly rare, and that exercise actually plays a protective role in regards to seizures, not an aggravating role. Despite a newfound push from doctors for epileptics to engage in exercise, the surrounding stigma still leads these populations to engage in less physical activity than the rest of us, which is an already low amount of physical activity. The belief held by experts right now is that individuals with epilepsy are allowed to be participating in any sort of sport they want, with a couple of exceptions, like scuba diving, base jumping, skydiving, and I don't think I even need to explain the logic behind this. But if someone were to undergo a seizure during one of these activities, it could prove to be a very serious situation. As for the overall effect of physical activity on seizures, it's highly recommended that diagnosed individuals put themselves through some amount of physical activity every day. Exercise increases the amount of circulating calcium, it increases the amount of dopamine, it regulates several brain functions, and also induces a number of antioxidant and anti-inflammatory mechanisms which promote neuroprotection. We can say for sure now that physical activity and exercise decrease the incidence and severity of epileptic seizures in individuals that are diagnosed, in addition to all of the benefits that it provides for everybody already. All right, so it is time for the case study. My case study is going to be on a man named Randy Marsh. Randy's a 45-year-old geologist as well as a farm owner from Colorado, and he's looking to put on a little bit of muscle and lose a little bit of fat in the process. Randy is 5 foot 10 inches tall, and he weighs about 185 pounds, and aside from epilepsy and being mildly overweight, Randy is in perfectly good shape and has no other underlying conditions. Randy was also able to achieve full seizure control through his medications, which are the AED, the anti-epileptic drugs. He says he works on his farm and it keeps him active for a couple hours a day. But as he gets older, he wants to prioritize his health and take himself to the next level. All right, so before I give Randy any sort of stress test, the first thing I'm going to do is get him cleared by his doctor. When you're working with someone with epilepsy, obtaining clearance from a physician is the most important thing, and you really shouldn't do anything before that happens. But after clearance is obtained, it's time to give Randy's exercise test. So the first thing I had him do is the Bruce protocol. As a lot of you guys probably know, this is a graded treadmill exercise test. Starts at a lower intensity with a lower speed and lower grade, a lower incline, and then these both move up as time goes on. During this test, I kept a really close eye on him. Monitoring people with epilepsy as they exercise is a must. It's super important. Randy lasted 11 minutes on this particular test, which is actually pretty impressive. It shows that he has a healthy cardiorespiratory system. And moving on, I wanted to test his flexibility. I chose two methods of flexibility testing. The first being the sit and reach test, and the second being the back scratch test. For the sit and reach test, which is where you sit and reach, he scored 2 inches, which is actually 2 inches beyond your toes, which is relatively impressive. It shows mobile and flexible hamstrings and lower back. And as for the back scratch test, which is where you reach one arm up behind your back and the other arm down over your head, you meet your fingertips like that. Randy was able to complete this on both sides, which actually shows healthy and mobile shoulders as well. I don't think a lot of people can do that. To test his strength, I chose 2 methods again, the body weight squat test and the 3-rep max bench press. The body weight squat test is how many body weight squats you can complete in a minute. And Randy scored 47, which is actually pretty good. It indicates good muscular strength and good muscular endurance in his lower body. And then during the bench press, he was able to get up 155 pounds for a 3-rep max, which is also pretty strong. Finally, using Skinfold, I measured Randy's body fat percentage to be about 19%, which is just about average. That's a completely okay body fat percentage. All right, for Randy's exercise prescription, I'm going to have him working out a total of 5 days a week, 3 of which are going to be aerobics, and 2 of which are going to be resistance training. After Randy told me that he had no preferred mode of cardio, I decided he would be incline walking on his cardio days at a moderate intensity for 50 minutes per session. Even though his seizures are under control, ensuring that he is well hydrated and assigning him moderately intense exercise instead of vigorous exercise should further reduce the chances of him having an epileptic episode during exercise. And since one of his goals was to put on muscle, his resistance program will be twice a week and roughly hour-long sessions per session. And these days will be split into an upper and lower body day. Each day will consist of 5 exercises, 3 sets per exercise, 8 to 12 reps per set. And as in any other program, progressive overload will apply as he gets stronger. At the end of his workouts, both cardio and resistance, I'm going to have Randy stretching for 15 minutes as a cool down, just to keep his joints healthy and mobile. All right, to finish up here, we are going to talk about modifications that might have to be made if you're working with an epileptic client who's looking to start an exercise program. When prescribing exercise for this population, it's important that safety is prioritized while still allowing them to reap the full benefits of the physical activity. First and foremost, before anything else, they're going to have to get clearance from their doctor. If their physician doesn't deem them fit to exercise in a program, they're probably not fit to exercise in a program. Medical clearance is number 1. Once that's obtained, the most important seizure preventative measure that you can take is making sure there's no risk of overheating or dehydration. Dehydration and overheating are 2 humongous triggers for seizures in people who are epileptic or otherwise, so you shouldn't have them sustain vigorous exercise for long durations of time. During sessions, it's paramount that you're attentive. You need to be watching closely, ensuring that they're looking well. And lastly, this applies more so for clients who are unable to achieve seizure control through their medication, but the mode of exercise should be safe. For example, a stationary bike. If you are on a stationary bike and you suffer a seizure, the worst that happens is you fall off and boink your shoulder and maybe boink your head. If you are swimming and you have a seizure, you can drown. If you are running fast on a treadmill and you have a seizure, you could, fall off and break your neck. If you are bench pressing really heavy and have a seizure, you could get caught under load. Things like this are not modes of safe exercise. It's important that you are choosing safe modes of exercise for clients who have not been able to achieve seizure control. All right, guys. So although this condition can present unique challenges for the people inflicted with it, does not mean people with epilepsy should avoid exercise overall. The cases of exercise-induced seizures are exceptionally rare, and even considering this, the pros vastly outshadow the cons. In addition to reaping the benefits that everyone experiences from exercise like muscle growth, bone health, weight management through a faster and stronger metabolism, better sleep, better immune function, reduced risk in chronic diseases, People with epilepsy will also get the benefit of less frequent and less severe seizures. Exercise can play a role in living healthy with epilepsy. Does not mean you can't participate in sports. Exercise is off limits. Epileptic people can still live happy and healthy lives with exercise playing a role in it. Thank you guys.